The airport was busy, full of travelers walking fast, checking phones, holding coffee. A luxury flight to New York was about to board. Among the crowd walked a tall black woman in a dark blue business suit. Her steps were calm. Her face looked peaceful. She carried only one small black bag. Her name was Vanessa Carter. No one noticed her at first. She didn't try to stand out. She didn't need to. She walked toward Gate 12 and showed her ticket. The young gate agent smiled quickly and said, "First class to the left, Mom." Vanessa nodded and stepped onto the plane. Inside the cabin, everything was shiny and quiet. Soft music played. Large leather seats waited for important people. She walked to seat 1A and sat down. A few other first-class passengers were already seated. They looked at her, then looked away. Some were surprised. Some were confused. One older man whispered to his wife, "She must be lost." Vanessa didn't react. She simply placed her bag under the seat and fastened her seatbelt. Then came the voice. A white flight attendant, wearing red lipstick and a tight bun, stopped in front of her. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said with a fake smile. "Can I see your boarding pass?" Vanessa looked up. Her face was calm. "Of course," she said kindly. She handed over the ticket. The flight attendant looked at it, then looked again. Her smile slowly faded. "I think there's a mistake," she said. "First class is full. You may have an economy seat." "No," Vanessa said softly. "This is my seat, 1A." The flight attendant frowned and looked around. One of the male flight attendants walked over and whispered in her ear. They both looked at Vanessa again. Passengers started watching. The woman in 1B leaned over and asked, "Is there a problem?" The flight attendant replied loudly, "We're checking something. Please stay seated." Then, in a lower voice, she said to Vanessa, "I need you to stand and come with me. Now." Vanessa blinked once. Slowly. She didn't move. "I've already taken my seat," she said. "Is there a reason I need to leave?" The attendant's voice got sharper. "Ma'am, this seat is reserved for first-class passengers." Vanessa looked down at her ticket, then looked back at her. "I am a first-class passenger." The whispering began. A man in row 2 turned on his phone camera. Another woman across the aisle leaned closer, pretending to fix her bag while recording. "She's causing trouble," someone said. "She doesn't look like someone who flies first class," said another. The flight attendant stepped back and pressed a button. Within minutes, 2 airport security officers appeared at the front of the plane. Passengers gasped. Vanessa looked up at the officers as they approached. One of them said, "Ma'am, we were told you're in the wrong seat." Vanessa didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She opened her bag slowly and took out a small black ID case. She held it out, but didn't hand it over. She looked the officer in the eye and asked calmly, "Do you know who I am?" The officer blinked. "No, Mom." She nodded slowly. "Of course you don't." She turned to the flight attendant. "You really don't know who I am, do you?" For a few seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the air had gone still. The only sound was the soft music still playing in the background. Then Vanessa closed the ID case without showing what was inside. She placed it gently on her lap. "I will not leave this seat," she said quietly, "but you are free to call your supervisor, or perhaps your airline director." The flight attendant looked nervous now. Her hands started to shake. Passengers were filming everything. One man stood up in the back and shouted, "Let her stay. She has a ticket." Another woman said, "I've seen her before. I think she's someone big." The flight attendant walked away quickly, whispering into her radio. The security officers backed off slowly, unsure what to do. Vanessa remained seated, eyes forward, calm, unbothered. Inside, her heart was heavy. She had seen this happen before. She had lived it many times. People judging her by her skin, by her quietness, by her refusal to beg. But this time, it would be different. Because this time, she wasn't just a passenger. She was the storm they didn't see coming. Vanessa Carter stayed seated. Her hands rested on her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply waited. Passengers whispered all around her. Phones stayed pointed at her, but she remained still, like a mountain that would not move. The flight attendant had disappeared to the back of the plane. Maybe to call someone. Maybe to hide. The two security guards stood nearby. But even they didn't know what to do now. Vanessa had not broken any rule. She had a real first-class ticket, and her calm behavior made it hard to treat her like a problem. The older man across the aisle cleared his throat. He leaned over slightly and said, "Miss, I'm sorry about all this." Vanessa turned her head slowly. She gave a soft smile, one that hid years of pain. "Thank you," she replied kindly, "but I've seen worse." As she waited, her mind wandered back to another time. She remembered being 12 years old, sitting at the front of her school bus. A boy told her, "You don't belong in this seat." She moved back then, not because she was wrong, but because she was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of explaining. But now, years later, things were different. Now, she had power. And power didn't always need noise. The same flight attendant returned, looking pale. She didn't say a word. She walked past Vanessa and went into the cockpit. The door closed. A minute later, the pilot himself stepped out. He was in his 50s, tall, and walked like a man used to being respected. He looked at Vanessa, then at her seat number, then at the other passengers. "Is there an issue here?" he asked. The security guard shrugged. "She has a valid ticket, sir." The pilot frowned. "I understand, but we don't want any problems. Maybe we can move her." Vanessa raised her hand slightly. Then she looked up at the pilot and said, "Captain, if you remove me from this seat, I will make one phone call, and your airline will wish it hadn't taken off today." The pilot blinked. The security guards stepped back. The cabin fell silent again. Vanessa didn't threaten him. She didn't raise her voice. But something in her eyes, calm, firm, steady, made everyone stop. Back in row 5, a young woman leaned to her boyfriend and whispered, "She's someone important. I can feel it." He nodded. "She's not yelling like most people would. That's power." The pilot stood frozen for a moment. Then he nodded once and walked back into the cockpit. Vanessa turned her eyes forward again. She looked at no one. But inside her mind, memories played like quiet music. She remembered her first job interview, how the man looked at her resume, then at her face and said, "You're very qualified, but we're looking for someone who fits our image." She remembered training twice as hard as others, because she couldn't afford to make even one mistake. She remembered being in rooms where no one looked like her, being talked over, ignored, judged. But she never lost control. She never broke down in front of them. Because she had learned. They expected her to get angry. They wanted her to yell. So she didn't. She stayed calm. And now, that calmness filled the cabin like heavy air. The flight finally prepared for takeoff. Vanessa stayed in seat 1A. The flight attendant returned once more, but this time, she said nothing. She just brought water and walked away. Passengers exchanged looks. Some nodded toward Vanessa. A few smiled. Others looked down, ashamed. As the plane took off, Vanessa closed her eyes. She thought of her grandmother's voice, the one who raised her. "One day, they'll try to push you down, but you sit like a queen, because they only try to move what they fear." At 30,000 feet above the ground, Vanessa sat higher than any insult. She had been judged by her color, but her silence spoke louder than their voices. This was not the end of the story. This was just the start. Because soon, the world would know who she truly was. The plane was now flying high above the clouds. Passengers were quiet. Some were still watching Vanessa. Some were thinking about what had just happened. She had said nothing rude. She had made no scene. But still, the energy around her had changed everything. Vanessa sat with her back straight and eyes closed. She looked peaceful, but inside her mind, she was thinking. Not about the flight, not about the people around her. She was thinking about what would happen next, because she knew something they didn't. In the back of the plane, the younger flight attendant, Maria, had been watching everything. Maria had joined the airline just 6 months ago. She believed in treating people kindly, and something about the way Vanessa was treated made her upset. She didn't do anything wrong, she whispered to herself. Her hand shook slightly as she walked to the small crew computer near the service area. She typed quietly, searching passenger details. Passenger, Vanessa Carter. Seat, 1. His status, Executive Platinum. ID, verified. Note, do not disturb. VIP clearance by HQ. Maria blinked. She scrolled down. Something else caught her eye. Linked profile. Vanessa Carter, Vice Chair, International Aviation Holdings. Her heart skipped. Vice Chair. That meant one of the people who helped run the entire airline. She covered her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. Maria quickly walked to the senior flight attendant, the one who had tried to move Vanessa. But the older woman rolled her eyes. "I don't care who she is," she said. "She didn't look like a first-class passenger. You saw her too. She doesn't fit the image." Maria stared at her in shock. "She owns part of this airline," Maria said softly. "You just insulted one of your bosses." The older attendant paused, but only for a moment. Then she scoffed. "We'll see about that." Back in first class, Vanessa opened her eyes. She felt the change in the air. She had felt it many times before. The moment people realized they had made a mistake. She took out her phone, connected to in-flight Wi-Fi, and typed a short message. To corporate PR team. Video likely going viral. Please prepare statement. No names yet. Wait for my go. VC. She pressed send, then closed her phone. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. A man in seat 2A finally got up and came forward. He was in a suit and looked like a businessman. He stood next to Vanessa and said softly, "Miss Carter, I believe I've seen you at the Global Aviation Summit last year." Vanessa looked up, calm as ever. "Yes," she replied. "That was me." The man gave a nervous smile. "I had no idea. I'm very sorry about how they treated you." Vanessa tilted her head slightly. "You weren't the one who judged me." He nodded, then quietly returned to his seat. One by one, passengers began to whisper more. Who is she? Did she just say she runs the airline? No wonder she was so calm. She didn't need to fight. She knew the truth. Maria slowly walked to Vanessa. She bent down a little and whispered, "Miss Carter, I saw your profile. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I would never." Vanessa placed a hand on Maria's. Her touch was gentle. "I know." The airplane moved smoothly through the clouds. But inside the cabin, nothing felt smooth anymore. People were whispering. Phones were buzzing. And everyone kept glancing at the quiet woman in seat 1, Vanessa Carter. She hadn't spoken since she sent that one message. She just sat calmly, like a storm that had already passed, but left the sky changed forever. The senior flight attendant, Ms. Howard, was nervous now. She had returned to the galley, breathing fast. She grabbed her phone and opened the airline staff app. She searched Vanessa's name. What she saw made her hands go cold. Vanessa Carter, Vice Chair, International Aviation Holdings, one of the top 5 leaders of the airline. Her mouth went dry. She remembered how she had spoken to her. Cold, sharp, rude. Now she knew. She had tried to remove the woman who signed her paycheck. Meanwhile, passengers were slowly learning the truth too. One man posted a video online. The caption read, "They tried to kick this black woman out of first class. Turns out, she owns the sky." The video began to go viral. Even at 30,000 feet, people were commenting fast. She handled it like a queen. Calm power. That's real leadership. This is what racism looks like, until the truth speaks. Maria, the young flight attendant, walked up again and gently asked Vanessa, "Would you like something to drink, ma'am? We have fresh juice, tea, or anything else you need." Vanessa looked up with a small smile. "Tea, please." Maria nodded quickly and left. No more questions, no more attitude. Only respect. 2 rows behind, a woman leaned over to her husband. "She's more powerful than anyone here," she said. And she didn't have to say a word to prove it. Her husband nodded. She could have yelled, but she didn't. That's real strength. Ms. Howard, the senior attendant, knew she couldn't hide anymore. She took a deep breath and walked to seat 1A. Her voice was tight as she said, "Miss Carter, I apologize for earlier. I didn't realize who you were." Vanessa slowly looked at her. Her eyes didn't show anger, just quiet truth. "You didn't treat me badly because you didn't know my name," Vanessa said gently. "You treated me badly because you thought I didn't belong." Ms. Howard stood frozen. Passengers turned their heads. Vanessa continued, "I didn't need a title to deserve respect. I needed to be seen as a human being." The words were soft, but they cut like a knife. Ms. Howard opened her mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say. She walked away slowly, head lowered. And for the first time in her long career, she felt ashamed. Back in her seat, Vanessa sipped her tea quietly. She wasn't smiling, but inside, she felt something stronger than pride. She felt peace. She had faced moments like this her whole life. People who judged before they listened. People who looked at her skin and not her story. But this time was different. This time, the whole world would see. Later in the flight, the pilot made an unusual announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'd like to offer a special welcome to one." The airplane slowly touched down at JFK Airport. The tires hit the runway with a soft thump. The engines roared low. The flight was over. But for Vanessa Carter, something much bigger was just beginning. As the plane rolled toward the gate, people sat quietly. Some were thinking about their own lives. Some were replaying the moment Vanessa was almost removed. Many were wondering how they would have reacted in her place. Vanessa remained still in her seat, eyes on the window. Outside, the city lights blinked. New York had seen thousands of landings. But this one felt different. When the seatbelt light turned off, passengers slowly stood up. No one rushed. People glanced at Vanessa. Some nodded. Some smiled. One woman whispered, "Thank you." Vanessa nodded politely. She stood, gathered her small bag, and waited for the door to open. No drama, no speech, just quiet dignity. At the gate, a group of airline staff waited in silence. They had just received a call from their headquarters. "Miss Carter is arriving," the manager said. "Make sure nothing goes wrong." 3 people stood with warm smiles and nervous hands. When Vanessa stepped off the plane, one of them approached. "Miss Carter, welcome back. We're deeply sorry for what happened." Vanessa looked at them. "I'm not here for apologies," she said softly. "I'm here for change." The staff fell quiet. She walked past them, calm as ever. Outside the terminal, 2 black cars waited. One for her. One for her assistant, who was already updating her social media team. But Vanessa didn't get in right away. She looked around. Something in her heart felt heavy. She wasn't angry. She wasn't hurt. She was simply tired. Tired of always having to prove herself. Tired of being doubted first and respected second. She opened her phone. The video from the plane had now reached over 2 million views. She scrolled through the comments. She's the definition of grace under pressure. Shame on that airline. Oh wait, she runs it. This is why representation matters. Vanessa looked up at the city skyline. She took a deep breath. Then finally, she stepped into the car. That night, her story hit the news. Not because she screamed, not because she argued, but because she didn't have to. Headlines appeared online. Black woman rejected from first class. Turns out she's a boss. Quiet power. How Vanessa Carter handled discrimination with grace. Airline executive faces racism on her own plane. Here's how she responded. People all around the world were talking. On social media, on news shows, in living rooms. Some were proud, some were shocked, and some were angry, not at her, but at how she had been treated. Back in her apartment, Vanessa sat by the window. She held a cup of tea in her hand. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't smiling. She was simply thinking. Her phone rang. It was her assistant. We've received interview requests from 3 major networks, the assistant said. And the board wants to meet tomorrow. They're calling it urgent. Vanessa nodded. Good, she said. It's time we talk. But before she went to bed, Vanessa opened her laptop. She wrote a short post for her followers. Today reminded me why I do this work. I didn't want to go viral. I just wanted to sit down in peace. But maybe this moment can be a lesson for all of us. We don't need to raise our voices to raise awareness. We just need to stand or sit with strength. Vanessa Carter. She clicked post. Then she closed her laptop. Outside, the city lights blinked again. Down the street, in a coffee shop, a young black girl sat with her mother. She had seen the video. She looked at her mom and said, "Mom, she looks like me." Her mother smiled. "And one day, you'll sit in first class too," she whispered. Just like her. The next morning, the air in the company building felt tense. It was the headquarters of International Aviation Holdings, the powerful company behind many major airlines. Top executives sat in the large boardroom. Some looked nervous. Some looked guilty. A few avoided eye contact. At the head of the table was an empty chair. Everyone knew who it was for. They were waiting for Vanessa Carter. At exactly 9:00 a.m., the glass doors opened. Vanessa walked in. She wore a simple black suit. No jewelry, no makeup, just confidence. Her walk was calm. Her face was calm. But her silence was louder than any voice in the room. She sat down at the head of the table. No one spoke. Then finally, the CEO cleared his throat. "Vanessa, first, I want to say we are deeply sorry for what happened yesterday." Vanessa looked at him. "I don't need another apology," she said softly. "I need accountability." The room fell silent again. Vanessa placed her phone on the table. She pressed play. The room filled with the sound of the in-flight video. The moment she was told, "This seat is not for you." Some executives looked away. Others looked down. When the video ended, Vanessa asked one question. "How many people has this happened to who don't have my title?" No one answered. She continued, "You know me. You know my work. You know my value. But on that plane, none of that mattered. Because of how I looked." Her voice never rose. But her words cut deep. An older board member finally spoke. "We agree this cannot happen again. We'll review staff training." Vanessa held up her hand. "I've heard that before. After every incident, we say the same thing." She leaned forward. "This time, I want real change, not just training. Policy. Consequences. Protection." The CEO nodded slowly. "What do you propose?" Vanessa took out a folder from her bag. She opened it. Inside were printed documents, a full proposal. Clear, strong, fair. She pushed it forward. Her plan included mandatory anti-bias training every year for all flight and ground staff, clear reporting systems for passengers and employees facing discrimination, disciplinary action for staff who break inclusion rules, a diversity oversight team reporting directly to the board, and a new passenger respect policy to be printed in every seat pocket. "This isn't just about me," she said. "This is for every person who's ever felt invisible in a place they paid to be." The board read in silence. Then one by one, heads began to nod. The CEO picked up the papers. "I support this," he said. "Fully." Others agreed. Votes were cast. Unanimous. The proposal passed. Vanessa didn't smile. She just looked relieved. But before she left, she said one last thing. "I didn't want to become a symbol. I just wanted to fly home. But if this moment helped someone else fly with dignity, then it was worth it." As Vanessa walked out, her assistant followed her. "You were brilliant," the assistant whispered. Vanessa shook her head. This wasn't about brilliance. This was about basic respect. And it took too long. Outside, the sky was bright. Later that day, the airline made a public announcement. "We failed one of our own leaders on Flight 203. We recognize the pain caused. Today, we begin a new chapter with real action, not words. We thank Miss Vanessa Carter for reminding us what leadership truly means." The statement went viral. But more than that, people listened. Not just employees. Not just customers. Other companies too. Vanessa had started a ripple. And that ripple was turning into a wave. Meanwhile, far from the boardroom, a woman named Teresa sat at her kitchen table. She was a cleaner. She had once been told not to sit in the front bus seat. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she watched Vanessa's video. "She didn't shout," Teresa whispered. "She didn't fight, but she won anyway." Her daughter sat beside her. One day, she would fly too. And maybe, just maybe, her seat would be waiting without question. A few weeks had passed since the flight. Since the moment Vanessa Carter had been told, "This seat is not for you." That one moment had become a spark. And from that spark, a fire of truth had spread across the skies. Airlines were changing. People were learning. And Vanessa, she was quietly building something bigger than herself. Today, she wasn't boarding a plane. She was walking into a large conference hall in Washington, D.C. It was the Global Aviation Leadership Summit. People from all over the world had come to hear about the future of flying, how to make the skies safer, fairer, and more human. Vanessa was the keynote speaker. She walked in wearing a soft gray suit. No security. No assistants in front. Just her. Calm. Tall. Unshaken. As she stepped on stage, the room fell silent. Thousands of eyes watched her. Some had judged her before. Some had doubted her. Now, they all listened. Vanessa stood at the center of the stage. She didn't need a loud voice. She just spoke the truth. "A few weeks ago," she said, "I sat on a plane in a seat I had paid for, and was told I didn't belong. Not because of my ticket, not because of my behavior, but because someone saw my face and made a choice. That moment wasn't new to me. But this time, I decided the world needed to see it." She paused. No one moved. "I didn't want revenge. I wanted reflection. Not to humiliate, but to educate. Because the truth is, our world is still full of quiet walls, invisible rules, and people who are told with a smile, 'Not you. Not here.'" She took a step forward. "But let me say this clearly. No seat, no title, no uniform decides our worth. Respect is not earned by power. It is owed by principle." The room was completely still. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked at the floor, ashamed of past thoughts. Vanessa raised her chin gently. "I didn't get to my seat by yelling. I didn't need to scream to be heard. I got there by knowing who I am, and never letting anyone shrink that." After her speech, the entire hall rose in applause. Not polite claps. Real, long, respectful applause. People didn't just hear her words. They felt them. Later that night, she sat alone at a rooftop cafe overlooking the city. Her assistant brought her a folder. "Here's the final approval," he said. "They're launching the Vanessa Carter Respect Initiative next month, worldwide." Vanessa smiled softly. "Good," she whispered. She didn't want statues. She didn't want her face on billboards. She wanted change. And she had it. At another table, two young flight attendants were talking quietly. One said, "That's her, the one from the video." The other nodded. "I hope I grow up to carry myself like that." Vanessa overheard them. She turned, smiled gently, and raised her cup. They both waved, shy but proud. In that moment, Vanessa knew her journey wasn't just about one seat on one plane. It was about every seat. In every room, every school, every board, every corner of life, where someone had once been told, "This is not for you." And she had answered back, without hate, "Yes, yes it is." The next morning, Vanessa boarded a new flight. This time, no one questioned her. No one stared. The flight attendant simply smiled and said, "Welcome aboard, Miss Carter. Your seat is ready." Vanessa nodded, walked down the aisle, and took her place. Not just in the sky, but in history.